Hi you guys, this week's lesson is going to look a little different than normal. We're actually going to be focusing on ACT strategies for the math section. All right, and there's 3 general strategies that I want us to practice for this ACT exam. All right, strategy number 1 is if you are not sure or you run out of time, I want you to have a letter that's already selected that you're going to use to guess every single time. All right, for me, that's always been the letter C, but you can choose your own letter and just stick with it. All right, the second strategy I want you to implement is when you start at the beginning of your test, I want you to do a quick check of, is this an easy question, a medium question, and a hard question? If it is easy, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, solve it then. Take that time, figure it out, work through it carefully, but relatively quickly. If it's a medium question, I just want you to put an M, mark it, and then come back to it later if there's time. These are the questions that with a little bit more time, you can figure out. The last one are questions that are too hard. They're ones where there are symbols that you've never seen before, content that we've not covered before. Honestly, if it just has a lot of words and it's going to take you too long to read through it, I just want you to use your guessing letter from strategy number 1, mark it, move on, okay? Don't stress, don't spend a bunch of time on things that you don't know how to do. All right, at the end, when you've gotten through your 60 questions and you're going back to the medium level questions, I want you to ask yourselves 2 questions. Can you sort it as an algebra question, a geometry question, or something else? The others might be probability is really common, or like series and sequences, things like that. And then the second question I want you to ask yourself is, does that question require a formula that we've already memorized? And I've put our formulas right below so we can review them real quick, right? Slope of 2 points, midpoint, Pythagorean theorem, your trig ratios, circumference for a circle, area of a circle, rectangle, parallelogram, and triangle, and then volume for a prism, cylinder, pyramid, cone, and sphere. And I really need to fix this, but remember that our sphere equation is actually 4/3 pi r cubed. My apologies. All right. Before we get started, I want us to review a concept that we learned way back in first quarter, and those are our angle pairs. So again, when we hear the word vertical angles, it's when you have 2 lines that intersect and they're opposite angles. And we know that vertical angles are always congruent. All right. Adjacent angles are angles that share a common vertex. So right here, they share a common vertex and a common side, right? Adjacent angles are the ones that are next to each other. Now, an equation stem that you can use when you have any information about congruence is something is equal to something else. You know that that angle measure is equal to the other angle measure, okay? The word supplementary, you should be thinking of the word straight, right? When you have a straight line, their angles add up to 180 degrees. Complementary, we should be thinking of the word corner, right? And their angles add up to 90 degrees. And then the equation stem that you can use if you have information about either supplementary or complementary is that the sum of those 2 angles, in this case 25 and 65, would equal 90 degrees because it forms a corner. Okay? When we go through the ACT exam, I want you to be looking for where are we using angle pairs. Okay, here's an example of how we can use those equation stems in a practice example problem. All right, so here it tells us to find the value of x, the value of y, and the measure of the angle that is labeled for y minus 1. So there's actually 3 things that we're doing here. Now in the diagram, we're gonna write an equation stem. What I want us to realize real quick is that we have x's here and a y here. When we're writing an equation, we need to have the same variable, which means we need to use this angle measure here and this angle measure here first. So we know those are called vertical angles, which means vertical angles are congruent, and we can write this equation. Once we have that equation written, it's just a matter of solving. So I want to get all of my x's on one side. 3x is a greater number of x's, so I'm going to subtract 2x. And then I have 5 equals x minus 33. The inverse of subtraction is addition, so I'm going to add 33 to both sides, and I get x equals 38. And that is one of my answers. Okay. Now, what I can realize is I have this straight line here, right? I can use x equals 38 and solve for that angle measure. 3 times 38 minus 33. I'm going to grab my calculator. 3 times 38 minus 33. I get 81 degrees, right? So if that angle measure is 81 and I have a straight line, now I can write another equation. This plus this equals 180 degrees. 81 plus 4y minus 1 equals 180. I can combine my like terms here, negative 1 and 81. 4y plus 80 equals 180. And then do inverse operations here. And I get 4y equals 100. The inverse of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and y equals 25. Now remember, we solve for x, we solve for y, and the last step says, what is the angle measure of the angle labeled 4y minus 1? So we can plug in our 25 here for y. And we get 100 minus 1, which means it is 99 degrees. And that's our last answer. All right, so here I hope you realize that we use our congruent equation stem, our supplementary equation stem, in order to solve these answers. All right, here it says to determine the value of x. Now, what I can see is that we have this corner, and then we have this angle measure, and then this angle measure. Since we have a corner, we're going to be using our complementary equation stem. So we have something plus something equals 90 degrees. In this case, 2x plus 6 plus 64 equals 90. So I can combine my like terms here. I get 2x plus 70 equals 90. And then inverse operations, 2x equals 20, and then divide on both sides, x equals 10. And that's my answer, because that is the value of x. All right. Now, what I'm going to do with this, it is the math section of the ACT. I'm going to go through, using our initial strategies, the first 12 questions and how I would go about doing it. Okay, so just as a reminder, number 1, what is your lucky guessing letter? Again, mine will be the letter C. Number 2, we're going to label it easy, which case you will solve now. Medium, solve later. And hard, you will guess now. All right, and then the last step is our medium questions. DIM. You are going to sort it into, is it an algebra question, a geometry question, or other? And then does it use a formula? Okay, let's go through it. Okay, number 1. I've seen these symbols before, but I don't immediately remember what they are. I am going to just sort that as a medium question and come back to it. A consultant charges $45 for each hour she works on a consultation, plus a flat $30 consulting fee. how many hours of work are included in a $210 bill for the consultation. So it sounds like they have to pay this $30 consulting fee no matter what. So if they paid a total of $210, I can subtract out that 30 and you end up with $180, right? You know that $45 per hour. So if you divide by 45, you end up with 4 hours of work. I was able to figure that one out and keep on moving. Vehicle A averages 14 miles per gallon of gasoline. Vehicle B averages 36 miles of gasoline. At this rate, how many more gallons of gasoline does vehicle A need than B to make a 1,008 mile trip? This one seems like something I can figure out, but it's going to take me some time. I'm going to come back to it. Number 4, t squared minus 59t plus 54 minus 84t squared plus 60t is equivalent to, well, when I say equivalent, it just means I'm going to simplify and combine my like terms. So here, I know that I have like terms t squared here and t squared here. And then I have a negative t and a positive t. So I'm going to do some adding. 1t squared minus 82t squared. I'm going to have negative 81t squared. And then negative 59t plus 60t will give me 1 positive t. And I have 54 left over, which gives me j. Number 5, the figure is composed of a square. So I know that squares mean all my sides are congruent. And an equilateral triangle, where all of those are also congruent. The length of CD is 6. What is the perimeter? So I know this is 6, this is 6, this is 6, this, and this. But I also know that in perimeter, we're only looking at the sides. So I'm going to do 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, which gets me 30. The expression 4z plus 3 times z minus 2 is equivalent to, well, here I know that if there's nothing in between, there's no plus or minus or division symbol, it means we're multiplying. And when we multiply binomials, we need to FOIL or distribute, essentially. So 4nz is 4z squared. And then if we do our outer, minus 8z, inner plus 3z, and last be negative 6. So we have 4z squared minus 5z minus 6. If 40% of a given number, so we're going to say that given number is x, is 8, is another word for equals. So I'm going to write this as an equation. 40% is the same as 0.4. 0.4 times x equals 8. Then what is 15% of the given number? So we're going to look for 0.15 of x equals, and that's our answer. So in order to solve this, this is being multiplied. We're going to divide by 0.4, which gives us an x value of 8 divided by 0.4. 20. Here we're going to do 0.15 times 20, which gives us 3. The 6 consecutive integers below add up to 447. So here it says when we add all of these together, it's going to equal 447. So it's just combining a bunch of like terms. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 x's. And then I have a minus 2 and a plus 2, which I know cancel out. I have a negative 1 and a positive 1, which I know cancels out. This is 0, so that doesn't matter. And we have a plus 3 equals 447. So again, all we have to do is solve this equation. Subtract 3 to both sides. 6x equals 444. I'm going to do inverse operation, so divide by 6 on both sides, and x equals 74. Just like that. Moving on. Number 9, in a standard XY coordinate plane, point M has a coordinates 5, 4 is the midpoint. So when it gives us the midpoint, we're not actually going to use our midpoint formula. Remember, the midpoint formula only works when they ask for the midpoint and they give us 2 endpoints. Here, we're given the midpoint and 1 endpoint, which is 7, 3. So in order to find point A, we have to figure out what is the change from our endpoint to our midpoint, and then apply that change again. 7 to 5, you're going to subtract 2. 3 to 4, you're going to add 1. So if we subtract 2 again, we end up with 3. If we add 1 here, we end up with 5. So you should get 3, 5. Rectangle ABCD has these vertices, and they're graphed below. What is the coordinate of your last vertice? This one, I'm just going to draw our rectangle here, and it looks like our point should be about 10, -2, -3, right? So that means those I can cancel out, and I'm mostly between F and G right now. What I look is from here to this point, it moved 4, right? Which means from this point to this point, it should also move 4. So from 6, it should go to 10. So I know that this is our correct answer here. All right, here Dyson owns 2 sportwear stores. She stocks 3 brands of t-shirts. The matrices. I don't know what a matrix is. You know what? This is a hard question. I've never seen these kinds of things before. So C is my guessing letter. I'm going to move on. And then number 12. Given the triangle shown below with exterior angles that measure x, y, and z as shown, what is the sum we know is addition, of x, y, and z? Well, we know that when we have a straight line, there are supplementary angles, right? So it's x plus 57 equals 180. And then we can solve 180 minus 57. We know that x is 123 degrees. Same thing here. We have supplementary angles. Y plus 72 equals 180. And if I subtract 180 minus 72, I end up with 102. The other thing that I know is that all triangles add up to 180 degrees, which means I can solve for that angle right there by doing 72 plus 57 and then 180 minus 129. And I end up with 51 degrees. And then I can do 51 plus z equals 180. 180 minus 51, I get z to equal 129 degrees. So I do 129 plus 123 plus 102. Oops, this should be 108. Apologies. That should be 108, in which case you'll get 360 degrees. One of the things that we briefly talked about is that all exterior angles of polygons always equals 360 degrees. So if you remembered that, then this should have been an easy question without all that math. But if you didn't remember it, then using supplementary angles, we could have figured that out. All right, I want you to go through the rest of this test, the rest of the 60 questions, using the same strategy. From this point forward, I want you to set the timer for 1 hour and go through the rest of these and go back to our medium level questions that I skipped from the beginning, okay? Once you finish those, there's going to be a Google form that's uploaded with this, so make sure you fill that out as well. All right. Show your work on a separate sheet of paper. I will be asking for a picture to see how you guys have been doing the work. All right.